Welcome back, Dr. Ehrman. This is the construct. It's my loading program. I can load anything from your physical animated character, our past discussions on your blog, the questions I pose to you, your responses, anything I want.
Right now we are inside a computer program?
Is it really that hard to believe, Dr. Ehrman? After responding to my open challenge to you on your members' forum, and personally inviting me to your blog via email to answer my challenge, were you naive to think I wouldn't put it to animation?
Is this even real?
It is very real, Dr. Ehrman. During our discourse on the Pericope Adulterae that commenced on your blog during the period of October 15th through October 29th, 2017, I challenged your hypothesis by asking you to empirically demonstrate the historical means by which John 7:53 to 8:11 was interpolated into the majority of Greek and Latin ecclesiastical texts prior to Jerome's Vulgate in 382 AD. You've been living in a dream world, Dr. Ehrman, promoting your postmodern narrative of how John 7:53 to 8:11 was magically inserted into biblical texts by unknown scribes throughout the ancient world, without anyone ever noticing. To change things up in this animated production, I thought it would be fun to recreate the scenes of our Defacto debate on the Pericope Adulterae in your own classroom at the University of North Carolina, Dr. Ehrman. I thought giving you home court advantage in the animation is the least I could do. And to be fair, Dr. Ehrman, I will only communicate your actual responses as you stated it on your blog, and will not deviate from our questions and responses. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy the animation.
There you are, Jonathan. I've been looking everywhere for you. Are you trying to hide from me, you silly Billy? By the way, I have a bone to pick with you.
No, not at all. What's up, Ellie?
Well, my best friend's sister's boyfriend's brother's girlfriend heard from this guy who knows this kid who's going with this girl, who saw your video on the defense of John 7:53 through 8:11, posted to YouTube last night, and it already has like 400 hits. Come on, Jonathan. I thought we were besties. Why didn't you call me? Remember, I am in charge of marketing and promotions for JS Productions.
Come on, Ellie. Don't feel that way. You know you're always in the loop. It took me so long to finish uploading it last night that I figured when I saw you this morning we could just talk about it then.
Well, I guess you're right, Jonathan. Plus, that British accent of yours has a way of getting you out of trouble. Anyway, we so have to tell Dr. Ehrman about the video in class today. OMG! I wonder how he's going to react. Jonathan, this will be the perfect opportunity to challenge him on his hypothesis. Can you imagine if a heated debate erupts between yourself and Dr. Ehrman? Exposing Dr. Ehrman's conspiracy theories in front of the whole class will definitely move you into contention for class president.
Whoa. I wasn't planning for that at all. It kind of makes me nervous just thinking about that. Do you really think that's the best approach?
Jonathan, you can totally do this. Don't wimp out. We've got your back. Come on, Jonathan. You made a video and everything. Don't back out now. Let's head to class so we can get this party started. Yoo-hoo, Dr. Ehrman. You have to see Jonathan's videos. They are animated, as in they're cartoons that feature you, Daniel Wallace, and James White as characters being taken to task over the Pericope Adulterae in St. John's Gospel. They're pretty high-tech. I haven't watched them all, but I think this one deserves a blog post. After all, the Alien book got a post on your blog after all.
Hello, Dr. Ehrman. I know it's been weeks since our last conversation, but in my follow-up video on the defense of the PA, I'm hoping my arguments can help you understand why I find it difficult to accept your narrative on how we got the text of the New Testament and your interpolation stories.
I'm afraid I don't have time to watch YouTube videos. But if you have an objection you'd like to raise here, I'd be happy to address it.
Thank you, Dr. Ehrman. Now, if you maintain the hypothesis that the original Gospel of John was deficient, John 7:53 to 8:11, then how do you account for its existence in the text of Ambrose in Milan, or Augustine's text in North Africa, Pacian's text in Spain, Didymus's text in Alexandria, Jerome's Vulgate, and his empirical observation that he found the passage in many Greek and Latin manuscripts? Do you remember? Augustine found nothing to object to in Jerome's Gospel translation, after he compared it to the Greek manuscripts he had access to. So, Dr. Ehrman, please document who were those scribes. What was their names? Where did this first occur? And how did they infiltrate the text without anyone ever noticing in the Latin West and the Greek East? I know you know we have testimony from Augustine, Ambrose, and Nikon to account for its removal from some scriptural texts. So, please, document the means by which this passage of Scripture ended up in the majority of Latin and Greek texts prior to Jerome's translation.
How about them apples, Dr. Ehrman?
I think maybe the way to answer your question for yourself is to dig deeper into what we know about textual variation more generally. The thousands of changes in the text that survived, some of them in the majority of manuscripts for centuries, even though they weren't original. You could start by reading the two main primers in the field, both called the Text of the New Testament, one written by Bruce Metzger and the other by Kurt and Barbara Eland. You'll see how variation worked and how sometimes readings not original became dominant in the tradition.
But, Dr. Ehrman, I want to remind you that we are not discussing spelling errors, copyist slips, word line omissions or variants, but the Pericope Adulterae is a consistent reading within the textual traditions of the Greek, Latin, and some Aramaic apostolic churches. Now, there are variants of this reading, as you well know, but nevertheless, the reading can be identified. And Dr. Ehrman, this has never been about this one reading, though the PA and the last 12 verses of Mark are the biggest. But as you know, and I know, we are really talking about the hundreds of consistent traditional readings, i.e., doxology, without cause, Father forgive them, who is in heaven, God will towards men. You get the point. That is commonly received that have come down through the apostolic churches. Dr. Ehrman, I'm confident you're familiar with Kurt and Barbara Eland's statement when they say, "No adequate history has yet been written of the Byzantine text, but this is a task we may well leave to a future generation, or to specialists particularly interested in it today." So, Kurt and Barbara really can't answer my questions. And also, J.N. Birdsall's statement that it is evident that all presuppositions concerning the Byzantine text, or texts, except its inferiority to other types, must be doubted and investigated de novo. That makes it clear that your theory is to try to explain the creation of these traditional readings, whether it was Hort's conflation theory or Kenyon's process theory, and or 1,000-year process theory. They're all basically false. So I do think it's a fair assessment to say that this school of thought really doesn't know. These theories would get a little traction if you had a letter from a bishop, as in the case of Jerome's translation, from Gord to Ivy, which resulted in a riot, especially amongst the Greeks, and elicited a response from Augustine at the request of bishops in his area. Or you could show me a decree from a council or synod, as was the case of Boniface challenging the text of Revelation, which the churches of North Africa responded with the Council of Carthage, addressing Pope Boniface directly in its canons, saying, "These texts were received from the Fathers." I mean, I first actually got that information from Metger's research. So, Dr. Ehrman, this is the evidence I'm looking for. A letter from a bishop, a council or synod, an actual person in the ancient world fighting for these readings to get into the text. Jerome, Augustine, Irenaeus were all aware of variants, copyist errors, and changes to the biblical texts. When you try to explain the PA as an interpolation at the hands of scribes, I wonder, Dr. Ehrman, do you really stand by that assertion? Because if you do, then you have to document how these scribes were able to get into the majority of Greek and Latin texts prior to Jerome's Vulgate. I just don't understand. These narratives create bigger problems for you, Dr. Ehrman, when you assert that the Gospels were a result of well-educated Greeks who didn't write in Attic but Koine with smatterings of Aramaic, because you then have to explain how the majority of independent Greek, Latin, Aramaic, and Coptic apostolic churches came up with the same 4 Gospels, naming the same authors, if the writings don't go back to the apostles as Irenaeus, Tertullian, and the apostolic churches said they did. I'll leave you with this, Dr. Ehrman. Why don't you accept what the apostolic churches said as evidenced in the writings of Tertullian and Irenaeus on the system that was set up to preserve the text of the New Testament, and their objective criterion for the text of the New Testament, including its readings, which successfully ruled out the shorter biblical text of Marcion and his interpolation theories?
Yes, as you might imagine, I realize we are not talking about a slip of the pen. I'm not sure how much scholarship you have read on the passage. The definitive study, massively documented and highly erudite, will appear next year, a book by Jennifer Noost and Tommy Wasserman, many years in the making. It will tell you everything you want to know, and then some.
Well, thanks for telling me about the book. But are you really saying that if I read the book, I would be able to explain it better than you, a qualified teaching professor? I highly doubt it. Although I do appreciate the honor of you thinking so highly of me, but I do realize my limitations. Well, I shall be waiting for the actual historical documentation of the bishop, or synod, ordering the PA to be put in and the many other verses in the text that were copied and received in the Orthodox churches. It will be a very interesting read.
My point is that among the hundreds of thousands of textual variations that involve scribes altering the text, you never ever have a bishop or synod ordering it to be put into the text. And so there is no reason to expect to find that for the PA either. Scribes changed their texts, sometimes massively, and those changes often were copied by later scribes to become the standard text of the late Middle Ages. It happened a lot, not just in this one instance.
Okay. That doesn't make any sense. You're just talking. Were these magic scribes, Dr. Ehrman? So you're basically saying that these rogue scripts had free rein to alter the text of the New Testament, and the bishops of these historic churches were clueless as to what was happening to all of the biblical texts within their own congregations that they were actually appointed to oversee? And these mass adulterations to Scripture spread throughout the ecclesiastical Greek, Latin, and Aramaic texts like a virus for about 1,000 years, infecting these manuscripts with the same consistent readings. When do we get to start learning about magic beans and fairy dust?